What if I told you that there was something that made even the Inquisitors tremble with fear? No, it wasn't the devil. It wasn't witches, nor the satanic pacts forged in the shadows. There was a creature that not even prayers, crucifixes, or the trials of the Holy Inquisition could contain. Because while the devil was a threat to the soul, the werewolf was a threat to the flesh, to the blood, and to the very natural order of creation. After all, what could be more terrifying than a man who becomes a beast under the light of the moon and devours not only bodies, but the very dignity of divine creation? Welcome to Ark of Mysteries, where forgotten horrors, forbidden legends, and humanity's darkest secrets come back to life. 15th century, Europe drowned in fire, crosses, and screams. Public squares turned into open tribunals. The flames of the Inquisition rose to burn witches, sorcerers, heretics, and all those who, in the eyes of faith, had strayed from the path of light. But amid the trials, judgments, and autos de fe, reports began to emerge that even the Inquisitors tried to silence. Reports that spoke of no witchcraft, no satanic pacts, not even the devil himself. They spoke of men who, under certain moons, certain enchantments, or perhaps ancient curses, abandoned their skin, their bones, and their human reason to become something far worse. Werewolves. Lycanthropia. That's how the tribunals referred to them in official documents. It wasn't a metaphor. It wasn't mass delusion. It wasn't mere superstition. They were real trials, inquisitorial proceedings, where people were accused not of worshiping the devil, but of being the devil incarnate in the form of a beast. In the Inquisition archives of Eichstätt, Germany, dated 1589, there is the record of a name that still echoes in the shadows of history. Peter Stump, known as the Werewolf of Bedburg. Peter was accused of transforming into a wolf and devouring women, children, and even members of his own family. His crimes were so horrific that the tribunal itself recorded that acts of witchcraft were more tolerable than such bestiality. And this was no isolated case. France, Germany, Switzerland, Spain. Between the 15th and 17th centuries, in some regions, the number of werewolf trials exceeded the number of witch trials. And the question that echoed in the dark chambers of the tribunals was, if this is not the work of the devil, then what is it? Because you see, the devil was a spiritual threat. He tempted the soul, he corrupted, but the person remained human. But the werewolf did not. He crossed the boundary between man and beast, between creation and abomination, between spirit and flesh. And that abyss, that theological void, made even the Inquisitors hesitate. After all, if a man could become a flesh-hungry beast, then who truly rules creation? God, or something much older and much more savage? And what you're about to discover will make you understand why the Holy Inquisition feared werewolves far more than the devil himself. When we open the forgotten archives of the ecclesiastical courts, we don't just find reports of heresy or devil worship. We find something much more physical, much more visceral, much more terrifying. Trials where men, peasants, shepherds, soldiers, even priests were accused of physically transforming, not spiritually, but physically, into wolves. Evidence? Witnesses claimed, "I saw it with my own eyes. The skin tearing apart, the bones twisting, and where there once was a man, there stood a beast. Mothers, weeping, swore, "He took my son." I heard the sound of teeth crushing bones. I heard it. Upon capture, Peter was accused of devouring 13 children, eating parts of his own son, slashing and disemboweling pregnant women, tearing out the fetuses, and eating them alive. When interrogated by the Inquisition, Peter confessed that since age 12, he had made a pact, not with the devil, but with something far older, a black spirit, a creature that dwells in the forest since before any cross was ever planted in the ground. He claimed to have received a magical belt made of skin, which, when worn, transformed his body into a beast. Bones elongated, fingernails turned into claws, his jaw stretched wide, capable of shredding flesh and bone. The hunger was insatiable. His trial became a public horror spectacle. Method of execution. First, he was placed on the wheel where his bones were shattered. Then, pieces of his flesh were torn off with red-hot pincers. Finally, his body was burned and the ashes scattered. Why? Because even in death, there was fear that evil might return. 1603, Jean Grenier, France. Teenager accused of attacking and devouring children in the Landes forests. He confessed that a man in black would visit him and give him an ointment that, when applied, transformed him into a wolf. 1521, Pierre Bergeau and Michel Verdun, France. Peasants, accused of transforming into wolves, confessed under torture that they killed, butchered, and devoured travelers passing through their region. 1573, Gilles Garnier, France. Known as the werewolf of Dole, convicted of murdering and eating 4 children. The tribunal described in detail how his body bore claw marks, which, according to witnesses, appeared every time he shifted form. The witnesses didn't just speak of death. These weren't just brutal crimes. They described transformation. I saw the skin peel away like clothing. I saw the eyes turn yellow. I saw the teeth grow. I heard the bones snap and rearrange. And that was what terrified the inquisitors. Because, unlike demonic possession, unlike heresy, unlike sorcery, the werewolf didn't need the devil. It was living proof that creation itself could become corrupt. It was a reflection that something existed much older, much wilder than any concept of heaven or hell. The inquisitors recorded in official registers, no prayer, no crucifix, no psalm could drive the beast away. It did not flee from the cross. It did not tremble at Scripture, because its curse was of the flesh, not of the spirit. That shattered the theological structure of the church. After all, if not even faith could stop a man from turning into a wolf, then who or what could? And what comes next is even more terrifying, because you'll discover how the church tried and failed to create rituals, exorcisms, and sacred methods to stop something that not even hell itself claimed as its own. Because here we reveal how the church, in desperation, tried to contain something that neither scripture nor doctrine could explain. Here, we begin to understand that the fear of werewolves went far beyond the fear of the devil. It was the fear of the collapse of divine order itself, where flesh, soul, and creation unravel. Get ready, because from here on, the line between faith, superstition, and heresy simply vanishes. When the first reports began to spread, the Inquisitors did what they always did. They opened their books, their sacred grimoires, consulted papal bulls, theological treatises, the writings of the Desert Fathers. They sought answers and found none, because there were no rituals, no exorcisms, no doctrine prepared for men who became beasts. In the medieval treatises on demonology, such as the famous Malleus Maleficarum, the Hammer of Witches, entire chapters are devoted to witchcraft, demonic possession, succubi, incubi. But werewolves? Only vague mentions, marginal, treated not as demonic manifestations, but as natural aberrations. And that was terrifying. Because if the werewolf wasn't the devil's creation, then what was it? A flaw in creation itself? A curse older than hell? A cosmic mistake that even God chose not to fix? The Inquisitors tried and failed. Crucifixes. The beast did not retreat. Psalms and exorcisms. The creature's body convulsed, but did not revert. Holy water burned, yes, but did not destroy. Sacred relics were ignored, or worse, bitten, shattered, spat upon. It is not a possessed soul. It is the flesh that has become cursed. Ecclesiastical Court of Poligny, 1574. They understood that the werewolf needed no devil. It was heresy incarnate. In desperation, some monks began to turn not to scripture, but to the very books the church had banned. Apocryphal texts, condemned grimoires, fragments of pagan rituals predating Christianity. Described in a 12th century codex found in the Abbey of Mont Saint-Michel was a ritual supposedly capable of separating the beast's spirit from the man's body. It included 3 circles drawn in lamb's blood, invocations not to God, but to ancient guardians of the boundaries, entities whose nature not even the church understood. Use of consecrated silver, mixed with the ashes of martyrs and the teeth of wild wolves. A Benedictine monk recorded in 1428 that this fast forced the alleged werewolf to consume raw bones for 7 days. The theory was that by making the flesh repulsive to itself, the curse cycle would be broken. No one survived the rite. File found in the Documenta Inquisitionis, dated 1629. Partial translation: the subject was bound with silver chains, and 3 priests, each bearing an inverted cross. At the 3rd hour of the night, Psalm 51 was begun. The body trembled, but the bones, yes, the bones began to change shape, even under the light of the cross. By the 5th invocation, the beast within the man revealed itself. Flesh tore, the eyes turned yellow, and teeth pierced the skin of his own lips. When the silver touched his forehead, the howl that echoed was not of this world. And the account ends abruptly. The manuscript is stained with blood. If the beast was not a demon, not human, and not a fallen angel, then what was it? An error? A remnant of a creation before ours? Or perhaps a reminder that beneath the skin, humanity never ceased to be a beast? The werewolf is not a possession. It is the fall of the flesh, the corruption of matter, a rebellion of nature against the Creator himself. Notes of Friar Augustinus, 1612. And if all of this, all these attempts, all these prayers, all these rites failed, Then there remains one final question. If neither God nor the devil can stop a werewolf, who or what can? And that is what you're about to discover. The hunter becomes the hunted, and what follows is a night where neither prayers nor screams could be heard. The night was cold, silent, but not the silence of peace. It was the silence that comes before the sound of bones breaking. Under a starless sky, 3 inquisitors crossed into the edge of a forest near Poligny, France. They had received reports that there, the birds no longer sang, children no longer cried, church bells no longer rang. All that remained was the sound of howls. They came prepared: silver crucifixes, blessed chains, a box containing 3 sacred relics, and a forbidden codex that none dared look at directly. But deep down, they knew none of it would be enough. It was exactly 3:23 a.m. A sound, different. Not a howl, not a roar. The sound of flesh tearing, of bones shifting, and of breathing that was no longer human, nor fully beast. Dominus Custodinos, murmured Inquisitor Antonius. But the prayer died on his lips when he saw it. Under the pale light of the moon, a figure, trembling, grinding its own bones, gasping as its spine bent, reshaped. Legs twisted. Hands, no longer hands, but claws. Blood poured from the eyes, as if the body itself rejected the transformation, yet at the same time reveled in it. Where once stood a peasant, now stood something that should not exist. The howl did not merely echo in their ears. It vibrated within the bone. The youngest inquisitor, Father Henry, raised the crucifix. The werewolf did not stop. It leapt. 2 claws. The sound of bone breaking like dry wood. Screams. Screams that no longer sounded human. Antonius tried to use the silver chain, threw it around the creature. For a moment, it seemed to recoil, but then it bit, tore Antonius's arm off. The sound was not of flesh, but of leather ripping, of muscle being shredded, and the blood. It didn't spray. It oozed, black, thick, like oil, as if life itself was being drained from reality. Only one remained, Father Marius. He ran, but the forest felt more like a maze than a path. He ran until his lungs burned, until his body weakened, until his legs no longer responded. And when he fell, he realized he was not alone. "Why do you run?" said a voice. Not human, but one that echoed inside his own mind. "You pray to a God who does not hear you here." The sound of claws scraping stone, the beast's ragged breath, the smell of meat, of blood, of damp earth, and then silence. No scream, no struggle, only darkness. When the monks of the convent went in search of the inquisitors, all they found were scraps of clothing, bones, shattered, scattered, and tracks, impossible footprints, hybrid, part human, part wolf, that disappeared into the forest. The bodies were never found. The report was never made official. Archived, sealed, hidden, forgotten. In the record, only one line. Case closed. Natural aberration. Further investigation not recommended. That night, the Holy Inquisition learned a truth it never had the courage to admit. The devil wants your soul, but the werewolf wants your flesh. And, in the end, perhaps, it is far easier to lose your soul than to survive what dwells beneath the skin of humanity. The day after the events, the monks sealed the convent gates, locked the archives, sealed the books, and the names of the missing inquisitors were simply erased, as if they had never existed, as if remembering them was a curse. The church did what it always does when it faces something it cannot explain. It buries, silences, hides, burns the records. Because if the werewolf is real, then perhaps the entire doctrine that separates man from beast, heaven from hell, and order from chaos is a convenient lie. In 1837, a Benedictine monk named Frater Lucien accidentally found a parchment hidden behind a false wall in the Saint Denis monastery. It was a confession, a letter written by an inquisitor who survived. We have always feared the devil because the devil wants the soul. But the werewolf does not. He does not want your soul. He does not bargain. He does not promise. He does not seduce. He doesn't need to, because what he wants is your flesh, your blood, your bones, your scream choking in your throat. The letter ended with a line that, according to Lucien, didn't seem written, but rather scratched into the leather. The beast does not live outside us. It lives within. Maybe. The true fear of the Inquisition was never the beast howling in the forests. It wasn't the man who, under the full moon, shed his skin and became a monster. Perhaps the real horror was understanding that the werewolf is simply the reflection of what mankind has always been and still is. The rage that cannot be contained, the desire to devour, the urge to destroy, the hunger, not for food, but for flesh, pain, dominance, blood. The civilized man is only the mask. The wolf is the truth. Anonymous manuscript 1624. Because the devil has always been an external entity, something outside, something separate, something you can reject. But the werewolf is not outside. He is within, in the bone, in the flesh, in the DNA of humanity, in the shadow you cast. When you believe you are civilized, that you are good, that you are saved, that you are pure, and if true hell is not a place, but rather our very nature, unchained, lawless, godless, because what I told you today is not just a story about werewolves. It's a warning. The full moon always returns, and what it reveals is not a curse. It is a truth. The truth that we are all flesh waiting to be devoured. And if you think this was the darkest story you've ever heard, know that there are archives, even more forbidden, waiting to be opened. So, If you wish to keep descending this abyss with me, leave your like, activate the bell, and get ready, because in the next story, perhaps, the beast we'll face is much closer than you think.